This is one of our more evergreen episodes, which means we're recording it now, but it's one of those timeless messages that's going to last far beyond the specific circumstances that we mention here. Are you familiar with the concept of antifragile? We're going to talk about that. But basically, as you think about antifragile, what it means is that, like muscles, some things need resistance to grow. And this episode is about how you can take the resistance that you have right now, and we all do, and use that for your own growth. Instead of conflict and aggression, here's governance built on grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka.
So I come today wanting to talk about just kind of President Trump's behavior. And it's everybody. There's a whole coarsening that has gone on that leads us into spending a lot of time on minutia. Stuff that in the great scheme of things is more symbolic than important.
Yes, I like how you frame that, Jim.
Right? I'm not saying that these things don't matter. So let's just take one hard example that happened in late 2025. The president has his name attached over top at the Kennedy Center. There's a level of vanity that we already knew he had. He has buildings and a whole empire with his name on it. But there's a level of vanity attached to that most of us wouldn't engage in, or like, even if we have it, we would know that there should be some kind of social restraint on our part. And he issues at the same time a series of, like, almost daily, obnoxiously rude, sick tweets. There was another tweet that he sent in 2025. They call them true social posts, but we're going to call them tweets here. It's the same concept, where it was like an AI image where there was a helicopter dumping feces on a crowd of people.
Right. That was after right time with the last No Kings rally.
Right. So, but these things happen every day. Like I bring these up so people have a hook to grab onto, but don't get caught up in the actual examples themselves, please. Because if you're watching this at some other time in the future from when we're recording it right now, it's still going to be true. It's going to be true for as long as two things are true. He's alive, he's president. And it's about making sure he keeps everybody's attention.
Yeah, I've been feeling that for a long time. This is just an attention grab.
Okay, but so here's what I believe we can say about this whole situation right now, because I don't believe it's just him. He's a Republican, and he's an attention-seeking whore. And then there's Democrats, and they're jealous of the attention he gets. So they respond to everything.
That's not a game anyone can win.
No, and that's mainly what I want to talk about today. Is I really do think this is a game that we all should stop playing. So I have this conversation after Donald Trump's elected the first time. It's with my son, Steven. And I say to him, I use a football analogy because we talk football a lot. And I said, you can run an off-tackle run. And if you gain 6-7 yards every time you do it, you're going to keep running that play until the defense gets smart enough to realize, hey, this is the signal. They're going to run that play again. And we don't want to get caught behind it, right? We're going to stop this play. We're going to run a defense specifically designed for it. And I was persuaded at the time that a lot of the antics that the president demonstrates, the Democrats would catch on real quick, and they would run a play to stop it. But they didn't. And Bill, there's a reason that they didn't, and that was because they found they were able to get their base electrified, and they were able to raise a lot more money by being the opposition. So he would run the play, and they would go along with it. They would let him gain the yardage because it meant that they got more support. So the analogy didn't quite work.
Even though they ultimately lost ground.
Yes, they didn't care about that because they still all got their own personal re-elections handled.
Yeah, they got the attention they needed.
They would feign outrage. And every day, what we see as part of what is considered our news cycle, I want to put emphasis on this, news. We pretend that the latest outrage is brand new and we should all spend our time talking about it.
It's more of the same. It's nothing new.
Exactly. So when he does this stuff, it's just amazing to me how easy, how thin skinned everyone is that opposes him. And how essentially, I think it's because they're wired the same way. It's almost like, how does he get away with that? I should be allowed to get away with that. But if this is the game that's going to be played, I'm going to make sure I still get my attention too. So I'm going to pretend that I'm upset and I'm going to feign outrage and I'm going to yell and scream. And the things that get the most attention commonly are the things that matter least. So late in the year
Yeah.
2025, there was a whole discussion about the expansion of the White House, right? And the sides that people pick in these things have everything to do with what they feel or think or believe about the president of the United States, not about the issue itself. And most of these things just simply don't rank in the things that we should be concerned about. They don't even come close. These aren't even the top 100, let alone top 25 things. And in a given day, you don't discuss 25 things. There's 2 or 3 issues that are always kind of at the top. And how many things are getting overlooked? How many things are getting ignored in the midst of all of this feigned outrage?
It's true. You and I talked the other day about that, and there's some really good things that are happening, but you're never going to see them.
Right.
They just don't. They don't raise. They don't come. They don't have enough conflict built into them, I guess, to raise the
Exactly.
news. Mhm.
Exactly. So we like to do what we call Girardian analysis around here. That is, we look at the philosophy of Rene Girard and apply it as a critical lens to what we're seeing. Very easy to do here because Rene Girard basically showed us that all of this feigned outrage, the thing that people think they're really mad about, is bull. It's just baloney. Okay. So we could illustrate this with the following picture. This is essentially how the theory of mimetic desire works. So you are the subject, and there is a model, and there's a desire is shaped in triangular fashion. Both of you have set your eyes on the same object. You want the same thing. And as you move closer and closer to the object, just like any triangle would work, you move closer and closer to one another. Meaning, in this particular setting, that you become more like your enemy. You are changed and transformed into the person that you are in rivalry with. And this is obvious. This may not be obvious to you, but it is obvious to people who are outside of this triangle observing this going on.
Sure. Yeah.
They can see how the behavior that you're exhibiting is similar to
The behavior of the one who wants the same thing.
yeah. So if you're the point that I really, really want people to get out of this is that fighting your enemy, you have a strong tendency to become more like your enemy with each passing day. You're not made better in this process. You are made more like the very thing you claim to oppose. And the only person that you may potentially be fooling is yourself, which is a spiritual issue. Okay. So let's move on from this. I want to unpack. But keep that idea in mind because it's going to keep playing out through everything else we discuss in the time that we're here together today. One of the books that I read this century that I think is one of the most important books written in this century was Antifragile by Nassim Taleb. Now, Nassim Taleb is arguing in this book that there are 3 states of objects. It's a very simple idea. The amazing thing is that everybody was aware of the first 2, and very few were aware of the third until he wrote this book. So here we are in the 21st century, and he basically is pointing out something that after you see it, you can't unsee it. It's blatantly obvious. It's right in front of you, but it was there all along. So if I take a cup, like my Gracearchy mug, and I throw it up into the air, and we all know what it's going to do. It's going to come back down, right? Most people are aware that one of 2 things will happen. Either the mug will break, meaning it was fragile, or the mug will just hit the ground and it won't really be impacted or changed. It'll be the same. Okay. And we think about this as the two states that exist in that situation, but there's a third. The third one he labeled antifragile. And what it would be is I would throw this mug up in the air and somehow or other, as a result of hitting the ground, it would be stronger. You say, well, that doesn't really work for a mug. We know that the mug really only has those two states, but muscles do not. And nor does he, as he very clearly illustrates, do markets have that design. There are things that by being tested, pushed, friction, whatever, they become stronger.
Yes. Yes.
So they need that resistance. They need that pushback. They need people to oppose in order to strengthen themselves. And I have repeatedly since 2017 been labeling Donald Trump as the anti-fragile president because he needs that resistance. So we told this story in a previous episode. I don't know whether this story is true. It's like mythically true. I believe it actually could have happened, but I don't know that it did.
Is this the Don Jr. thing?
The Don Jr. story.
Yeah.
So you remember Don Jr. is at an event with a bunch of, Trump fan kids. It might have been a Turning Point event. I actually do think that's where it was, as I was originally told this story. And one of the kids says, hey, my mom wishes he would tweet less. And he's like, Don Jr. is like, are you kidding? My father gets up and writes 8 or 10 or 11 tweets in the morning, and he controls the news cycle for the day. And if you think about it, that's brilliant. But just like running that same play over and over and over again, if people would stop playing along. Now, I'm going to make a prediction what he would do. If people stopped playing along, he would turn up the volume.
Oh, yeah.
He would do something even more intense to try to make sure that he got attention to himself. Okay. I would have liked to have seen somebody run against him who had the spiritual composure to take everything that he did and find a way to love him back. Donald's wrong. He shouldn't have said that, but I don't really want to dwell on that. We've got positive things to cover. We got important issues to address.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Right?
That would be so refreshing right now.
It would be, but how many people want that? Like, see, we're all participating in this.
Exactly.
And the opposition is living off of it. They want him to keep being as bad as he is. It's good for business.
Yeah.
The consultants love it. The fundraisers love it. The incumbents love it. It is the way the game's played right now. Like I said earlier, I realized I was wrong because essentially the Democrats, in response to him, are codependents. They need him to keep being abuser. There's something about his abusive behavior that they relish, that they actually kind of enjoy, that they kind of feed off of, and they can always be counted upon to respond.
Well, this is such a it's not even tail wagging the dog. This is taking over the normal mental processes that people have. It's just hijacked them.
It just hijacks them.
And it leaves nothing good in its wake. There's no productive, positive building of anything going on.
Yeah, so I'm glad you actually framed it that way, because I think that they believe that the morality of their cause justifies their response. Now, we've already covered why, from a Girardian lens, that doesn't work. But they did choose a specific strategy, and it was very prominent during his first term. It was summed up in the word resist.
Yes.
And in the interregnum between being president in 2020 and coming back in 2025, during that 4-year span, in order to keep him from running, they turned up the volume. They began using even the justice system. They used every means that they possibly could to try to increase resistance. The Washington Post starts to go with this label. They say democracy dies in darkness.
Right. Yeah, we've heard that before.
right? And they had this slogan, resist, and they acted on resist, and they pushed and pushed and resisted and resisted.
But that's just like
And
throwing gasoline on a fire.
it is. And I want to get into like the nuance, the specifics of this, because I really want to reach people at a heart and gut level today more than just a head. I want to give you just enough knowledge that you can turn this over and in your head again and again until you're kind of convicted by it. We call our show Gracearchy. And one of the things that we have been wanting to do all along is to introduce to people a lemonade on the porch mentality for your enemy. Hey, let's sit down and have a drink. Let's understand each other as best we can. Let's be civil and even kind to one another in the hopes that maybe we could see each other's humanity and each other's point. And, we've held up Daryl Davis as kind of like a patron saint of someone who has done this, got all these Klan robes in his closet as a black man talking people out of a life of hate. And one of the key ideas, and we'll share those links in the show notes, one of the key ideas in there was listening. Listening was incredibly important. Didn't mean he agreed, didn't mean he endorsed, didn't mean he was supporting. It just meant he listened.
He
and found
listened.
out who they really were and why they were the way they were. And then played back some of what they were saying to themselves in a way that, geez, did I really just say something that stupid? Like they was like, well, black people are this or black people are that. And he's like, well, you do realize you're sitting in the car with one right now. Or you're at a
Right.
bar, I just played music and you enjoy my music. We're sitting here and they'd be like, well, no, you're different. Well, he'd be like, how so? Look how black I am. Right. And he got through to people. So there's an old phrase that I grew up hearing in Christian circles. Love the sinner, hate the sin. And it's trite. And I understand why people have kind of been resistant to it. But that kind of ethos needs to make a comeback. So I'm going to amend it to the following way. I'm going to say, love the sinner strategically, surgically, and prayerfully consider the sin. Because, every time you see somebody failing, they're human and you are too. And I recognize when I look in the mirror, I've got failings. And then there are failings that I'm not aware of. There's a part of my identity that belongs to people who know me, who can tell me things about myself that I'm not fully aware of. Right?
Yeah. It takes a rare person to be able to do that with grace.
This show is brought to you by the Zero Aggression Project. Zap newsletter subscribers get alerts when each episode is released. The Zap website is also the pathway by which you can contact us by email and support the show. This program operates thanks to tax-deductible Zap contributions, and we appreciate your support. So, zap the state, and have a nice day.
Okay, so just you have probably more than once talked to Rebecca, your wife,
Yeah.
about me. I've probably come up in some conversation. You've come up in conversation here with Sue, okay? So you're in the midst of talking, and you may say something, I don't know what it is, and this is completely normal to do it. Say, well, Jim has this thing that he does, right? And you tell her the story. Jim does this thing where I'm not completely aware that it's a thing that I do, right? That's normal. That's natural. Both that you would have that conversation, but more importantly for our purposes today, that I would be unaware of it.
Right. Right.
That's why friends are valuable, because iron sharpens iron, and sometimes those things need to be said. And the friends around you who will tell you the truth about who you are, where you have a blind spot, we call it, those are real friends, right?
Well, in this environment, we welcome that
Yes.
with our friends.
Yes.
So help me scale that up, because Trump's a long way from my friend.
Well, I say that, I said, love the sinner strategically, surgically, and prayerfully consider the sin. So the prayerfully part is recognizing there, but for the grace of God go I. And I'm going to say more about prayer in a moment. But the surgical part, I got the opportunity a few years ago. This was right before the worldwide sickness. to go to Atlanta. We stopped in Atlanta on a trip, and we visited Martin Luther King Jr.'s home, his church, and Ebenezer Baptist there. We visited these places and went to the museum that they have there. And they have this large display about nonviolence as a philosophy and so forth. I was very, very moved by it. And if you participated in the philosophy of nonviolence, you had to recognize that your enemies, which in this case could include cops with fire hoses and mean dogs and billy clubs, right? You had to be able to recognize that bad things might be said and done to you. You might be verbally and physically assaulted. You might be badly injured in the process of what you do. But you didn't have the ability, if you wanted to be successful, to resist. That was exactly the point. That resistance could not happen. You had to be entirely, in that circumstance, a victim. And Martin Luther King Jr. got this idea from the example of Jesus Christ and Mahatma Gandhi. And it works. It's this power under strategy where you serve your enemy, or you at least allow your enemy to do their worst to you. It helps, by the way, strategically if there's cameras there. And by doing it, you show your innocence. You show the injustice of the other side. They go excessive. And instead of being like the Girardian situation, where you're like, well, we're after the same thing here. I'm going to get power over you. I'm going to be just like you. I'm going to beat you at your own game. You go, nope, we're going to play a completely different game. We're going to flip the rules. The meek will inherit the earth this time. And that is strategic. Matthew 10:16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. There's a serpent shrewdness and a dove innocence to the way that we should be confronting the challenges that are before us. And that's grace.
So help me scale this. I know where you're going here, but I want to hear you say it.
Okay. I have, I think,
with
three.
You and me, we can do that on a one-to-one, but we're talking about Martin Luther King with thousands of people.
Millions.
Yeah, millions.
Okay. I'm going to give 3 grace points specifically relevant to where we started, which is some tweets gone out. Everybody's getting all exercised over it. We're pretending like it's news, even though this is the same thing that happened yesterday and the day before and every other Groundhog Day before that.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to give 3 grace points. 1, at least 3. 1, recognize bait and ignore it. I mean, you can see what is symbolic. You can see what's real. When you see something that's symbolic, let it go. Yep. Oh, he put his name up on the side of a building. Who cares? I mean, seriously, like out of all the things that we're going to choose to get exercise about, are we really going to spend the limited energy? This administration has moved in blitzkrieg fashion. They are coming offensively at you. And I'm doing this on purpose. This is bad form to be doing this on a podcast. I'm making a noise. It's really annoying. I'm punching my own hand for those of you who are listening. That's what it's like every day, and it's relentless. And if you spend, I'm going to get ahead of myself, but just stop, okay? We're going to say something more about this in a second, but just stop. I want you to recognize strategically the shrewdness of this. The serpent shrewdness of this is that the president's approach is an anti-fragile approach. He needs your resistance. If you deny it to him, you have disempowered him. It's that simple. I'm saying recognize bait and ignore it. I didn't say ignore everything that they do if you disagree with it. Please be clear.
Yeah, that's a difficult thought process.
Recognize bait and then ignore that. Okay? Democracy dies of darkness.
That's equally good bait on the other side.
So you don't have to agree with this thing called the law of attraction. Okay? I think it's not a law, but I do think it is a strong tendency that the universe works this way. When you actively resist a negative event, it usually keeps you energetically tied to it.
Yes, I agree with that.
Whatever you push against, you tend to activate. Whatever you fear, you tend to invite. Whatever you fight, you tend to focus on. I'm not saying it's a law. I'm not saying it happens 100% of the time. I'm not getting all woo about how that works. I'm just saying that tends to be the state you put yourself in. And then the stuff that you spend your time thinking about tends to be the stuff you attract to yourself. Just tends to happen. That's why somebody thinks it might even be a law, because the tendency is so obvious. If you're going to resist a negative thing, if you're going to push it, you're not necessarily going to push it away. You're probably going to feed it instead. So if something is bait, learn how to recognize what bait is. In a personal one-on-one self-defense situation, somebody says your mother reeks of elderberries and your father was a hamster, or whatever they say to you, right? You can walk away from that. So every time the president does the metaphysical equivalent of the same thing, we could all walk away from that. And he would have to get shrill and louder and louder and louder until he gets his attention, until everybody doesn't pay attention to this boy anymore. Democrats aren't going to do it because they're jealous, but you can do it.
Yeah, individually we can. The news media isn't going to do it because they need that. That's the revenue for them.
If you're not tuning into all the clicks, if you're resisting it, we all, in this ecosystem, we all operate on clicks. And even the big boys are now coming and playing here. CNN's here, for example. Fox is here, for example. They're all coming in and they're looking for the clicks. And if you say, oh, there's a conflict-driven headline. Oh, this is about the bait. Like, oh, did you hear what so-and-so said? So-and-so owns so-and-so. You could just choose to turn that off. And if they stop getting clicks, which is the number one way that everybody in the political space gets attention, is by doing the conflict-oriented thing, is by putting the bait out and saying, hey, what's so-and-so's take? Bill, would you like to know what bad thing was said about Joe Rogan by so-and-so? And would you like to know what so-and-so, or what Joe Rogan said back? I mean, this is again and again and again the thing. I just did it the other night myself. I just literally sat and watched somebody's take on Joe after he had said something about them. And by the way, it's because they had said something about Joe first, and on it goes. And again, this ain't news. I just wasted moments of my life, my spiritual stability. I didn't gain any new knowledge. I didn't gain any pleasure. Unless I'm somehow or other enjoying seeing two people go at each other. But there was nothing edifying about that. Again, I'm going to get ahead of myself. 2, if you find yourself starting to hate Trump or any of your political opponents, this is an overall rule, not just for Trump. This is for everything.
Yeah, just anything.
If you find yourself hating your political opponents while you're sitting there, you start hating people while you're scrolling, turn off, pause your own news and social media consumption. Just turn it off. I didn't say you had to give it up. Just walk away for a period of time. As soon as you sense that feeling, like cultivate an energy where you're aware that this is happening inside you. You're outraged and upset. Oh boy, close it. And just take a break. I'm going to say that when you can go back is when you have control of your own emotions. And 2, in the meantime, use that as a provocation to pray.
Here we go. Yes.
Pray. In fact, the scripture says pray without ceasing, but I'm just simply saying pray when you can turn off your social media. You can go social media, anger, prayer. How's that? Okay. I'm not saying pray without ceasing. You should, but which one of us does? But if you took that as a signal that, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong headspace right now, I have the wrong spirit at the moment, what might change? Not just for the world at large, because we're always trying to fix the world like we're God or something. We're not. It's here. It's you that have been broken in this process. It's you that you're hurting in this process. Now, you're going to carry some of that hurt out into the world. You're not going to make the world better. I just want to let you know. But you can step away from that. So that leads me into number 3, which is pray for authority. The Bible explicitly says to pray for those in authority and pray for your enemy. Pray for your enemy. So grace in this arena is recognizing you're not perfect. You get things wrong and you manage to hurt others when you do. And I do it. I don't mean to. I have a particular issue with stress. I have too many hats on, and sometimes it gets the best of me. And the people I care about and love the most have seen me at my worst. And they've had to be at the end of it, right? Oh, don't go near them now. Right? There's my cross. Every one of you listening in the sound of my voice right now has something just like that. You have something that you do that hurts people that you care about. We're not perfect. Second, grace is hoping that mercy prevails and that before judgment, someone repents and is redeemed. I have never said that grace is some doormat weakness, simple-minded kindness, so open-minded that your brain fell out the back of your head and your conscience is right behind it. Never said anything like that.
That's not
Grace can be tough. Love can be hard. But grace is hoping, desiring that mercy will be shown so that enough time is bought. I remember somebody describing to me from a Catholic perspective their opposition to the death penalty. They said if we believe in an eternal God, we would want a person to have as much time as possible to sit with their sin in the hopes that they will awaken, even if it's in the back of the prison cell. They will awaken and repent and be redeemed. So if we administer the death penalty, maybe we're cutting short the very process. Now, whether you agree with that whole line of thinking, there's a principle there, which is to hope for the best in another. To want to see someone redeemed, which is what the cross says. The cross says the most innocent person in the world ever suffers the worst possible capital punishment in the hope that mercy would prevail. This is a message of mercy. That's why it's the gospel, aka good news, because it's a message of mercy. So prayer, as it relates to praying for your authority or praying for the enemy, is a confession that I'm not perfect, but I hope that God will be as merciful to my enemies as he's been to me. So let's talk about hope. Bring this to a close. Hope is commonly, Bill, presented as the opposite. It should be thought of even as the opposite of anger or depression. If you're so frustrated that you feel a sense of hopelessness, that's depression. Where's my hope right now? I don't even have the will to live. Hope is what keeps us going. It's what gets us out of the bed in the morning and keeps us going. Some anticipation that the future is better than the present. We are going to make things good. And it's not healthy for our body. It's not healthy for our mental health. It's not healthy for our relationships to be without hope.
Yeah, it takes all the life out of the room.
If you think about politics for just a moment, it's a place of fear instead of hope.
Oh, yeah, the whole thing.
Fear of the other, fear of a circumstance, looking to figure out who we blame for that. And it becomes toxic to our relationships. How many people have the story where they've got somebody in their family that they don't want to have Thanksgiving dinner with anymore? Politics doesn't somehow or other make everything better. There's a strong tendency in the political sphere to dehumanize and in the process make ourselves less humanitarian, or let me just say it more bluntly, less human, to make ourselves into beasts. So here's where I want to close. Instead of what you oppose, what is your vision? What do you want instead? If you started focusing on what you wanted instead, you wouldn't stop to kick every sleeping dog. You wouldn't stop to say, oh, we've got to oppose this tweet or this sign on this building, as much as you would spend your time trying to cast a better way. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. That's where our mind's supposed to be more focused. I want to be clear. I don't want anybody misunderstanding what's been said here today. There are things that your political opponents are doing that you firmly believe are wrong, and speaking about them is just and good and right. But spending all of our time in animus, hatred, wanting judgment to rain down on others empowers our enemies and damages us. If there is any virtue, if there is any praise, think on these things. And then, by all means, share those things.